There's a specific moment that happens at every car dealership in America. The paperwork is on the desk, the pen is hovering, and the salesman asks the question he's asked 1,000 times. So, how are we handling payment today? And you, proud of the savings account you've been feeding for 3 years, slide a cashier's check across the desk. $35,000. All of it. The salesman smiles a smile that looks like approval, nods a nod that looks like respect, and you walk out feeling like a financial adult who just did the most grown-up thing imaginable. Here's what you don't know. That smile wasn't admiration, it was relief. Cash buyers are the easiest money a dealership ever sees, and you just made his week. That check also cost you roughly $3,500 you'll never get back. My name is Nick, and today I'm going to explain why the most responsible car advice in America, pay cash, never finance, is quietly costing disciplined people thousands every trade cycle. Whether you have cash saved, whether you're financing anyway, or just buying a car in the next couple years, this video is going to save you real money. Let me explain what I mean by that, because this is where most people's understanding is stuck in 1995. The rules everybody keeps repeating about car buying were written for a world that no longer exists. When your parents were buying cars, auto loan rates were sitting around 8 to 12%, savings accounts paid you basically nothing, and the idea of a 0% promotional rate didn't exist outside of late-night infomercials. In that world, don't finance made perfect sense. You were paying the bank a ton of interest to borrow money you already had while earning nothing on the cash you didn't spend. It was a losing trade. Of course, the advice was pay cash. Anything else was arithmetic suicide. That world is gone. In 2026, you can walk into a dealership and finance at 0% on something like a dozen major brands. Nissan, Toyota, Hyundai, Ford, Tesla, Kia, Subaru, Chevy, and more, if your credit's decent. And while you're doing that, online savings accounts are paying somewhere in the 2.5% to 4% range, depending on where rates are sitting. 3.5%, that's the entire ball game in one sentence. When the bank is willing to lend you money for less than the bank is willing to pay you for storing money, paying cash is no longer responsible. It's just leaving money on the table and calling it virtue. Now, I know a good chunk of you are already arguing with your screen. So let me put two actual people on the chessboard and run the numbers side by side, because vibes don't build wealth. Meet Clark and Jenna. They're both 31, they both make about 80 grand a year. They both walk into the same dealership on the same Tuesday with $35,000 in savings, and they both want the same Toyota RAV4. The only difference is how they pay. Clark does the cashier's check thing we just talked about. His savings account goes to zero. His monthly car payment is also zero, which feels amazing for about 2 weeks and then stops feeling like anything at all. Jenna takes the 0% financing deal. Her monthly payment is $583. She takes her $35,000, dumps it into a high-yield savings account paying 4%, and sets up an auto pay to pull the car payment from that account every month. She does nothing else. She doesn't invest in stocks. She doesn't pick hot options. She doesn't get lucky. At the end of 5 years, when the loan is paid off, she still has about $3,500 left in that savings account. 3.5 grand of free money that appeared because the bank paid her more to hold dollars than she paid the bank to borrow them. Same car, same 5 years, same everything, $3,500 in her pocket that Clark doesn't have in his. And if Jenna's slightly less allergic to risk, it gets way worse for Clark. If she takes that $35,000 and puts it in a boring S&P 500 index fund instead of a savings account, the S&P 500 has historically averaged around 10% a year over long periods, not guaranteed and definitely not smooth year to year. Over 5 years, you might come out way ahead, or not. The point is, that money at least has a chance to grow. In a checking account, it doesn't. She made $21,000. Clark made zero. In the universe where Jenna didn't even get the 0% deal and had to finance at 3%, she paid about $2,700 in interest and still came out about $18,000 ahead. 18 grand. That's a used Honda Civic's worth of money she has that Clark doesn't, just because she understood that dollars invested grow and dollars spent on depreciating metal do not. Hold on, let me pause and hit something important before we keep going, because some of you are going, Nick, this all assumes you can even get a 0% deal. What if you can't? Fair. Let me show you the other villain in this story, because the people screaming at you to pay cash are accidentally protecting you from a different scam that nobody talks about. Walk into any dealership and they've got a back room. It's called the F&I office, finance and insurance. That room is where most of the dealership's actual profit comes from. Not from selling you the car, from selling you the loan, the warranty, the paint protection, the gap insurance, the tire and wheel plan, and whatever else they can bolt onto the paperwork while you're already tired from negotiating. The average dealership now makes around $2,500 of pure profit per car out of that room alone. That's up roughly 50% from where it was before the pandemic, which tells you exactly where the industry has been quietly pivoting its business model. Here's the part most buyers don't know. When you finance through the dealer, they don't just pass along the bank's interest rate, they mark it up legally. A lender offers the dealer a buy rate of, say, 5%, and the dealer turns around and offers it to you at 7%. That 2-point spread goes straight into the dealership's pocket. On a $35,000 5-year loan, a 2-point markup is roughly $1,800 of pure dealer profit that you never see itemized anywhere. You just see a monthly payment and you sign. And here's the kicker that flips the whole thing on its head. Cash buyers, the people who walk in feeling like kings because they've got the money up front, actually tend to pay more for the car, not less. The dealership knows a cash deal means no F&I revenue, no rate markup, no finance bonus from the manufacturer, no warranty upsell. So they make it back by being less flexible on price. Edmunds has run the numbers on this, and on average, cash buyers save something like negative $300 versus finance buyers. Negative. They pay $300 more. That's the opposite of every instinct the pay cash crowd has. Announcing I'm paying cash at the start of a negotiation isn't a power move, it's a tell. You just told the dealer you have zero leverage on anything except sticker price. So cash buyers aren't wrong to be suspicious of dealer financing. They're just solving the wrong problem. The real move isn't refuse to finance. The real move is finance through a credit union or a bank, not the dealership. Navy Federal is advertising under 4% right now. PenFed is even lower. Your local credit union is probably competitive too. You walk into the dealership pre-approved, you negotiate the car price like it's a cash deal, and then at the very end, you hand them the paperwork from your credit union and watch their face fall because you just cut the F and I office out of the conversation entirely. The dealer hates this, which is exactly how you know it's the right move. Okay, back to Clark. Because about 18 months after his proud cashier's check moment, something happens. His wife's car, which is older and was already on borrowed time, throws a transmission. Repair bill, $4,200. Clark has about $600 in checking. His savings account is gone. It became a Toyota. So what does Clark do? He charges the repair to a credit card at 22% interest. Jenna, meanwhile, still has her $35,000 sitting in the savings account, earning 4% while she pays down the car. She writes a check for the transmission, doesn't even notice, and goes back to her life. This is the part of the pay cash advice that nobody thinks through. A 4% car loan taken before the emergency is basically insurance you're paid a tiny premium to hold. Paying cash and then charging the emergency to a credit card at 22% means you just traded 4% debt for 22% debt. You didn't avoid debt. You just delayed it and picked the more expensive kind. That's not financial responsibility. That's bad sequencing dressed up in a cashier's check costume. And the numbers on how common this is are genuinely bleak. A recent Bankrate survey found that 59% of Americans don't have enough cash to cover a $1,000 emergency. 27% have zero emergency savings. Clark, the second he handed over that check, joined a group of people who are one flat tire away from a payday loan. Jenna's boring little savings account isn't just compounding at 4%. It's also keeping her out of that group. Here's another thing Clark didn't see coming. 2.5 years after the dealership, he applies for a mortgage. His credit score has quietly dropped about 25 points since the big cash purchase, and he has no idea why. Jenna, same income, same everything, gets approved at a rate roughly a quarter point better than his. On a $400,000 mortgage over 30 years, a quarter point difference is more than $20,000 in lifetime interest. Why did this happen? Because FICO, the company that decides your credit score, weights something called credit mix at 10% of your total score. Credit mix means you've got both revolving credit, like cards, and installment loans, like car loans and mortgages. Clark has just credit cards. Jenna has cards, plus a car loan she's been paying perfectly for 2 years. In the eyes of the algorithm, Clark looks like a slightly riskier bet. Paying cash literally denied him the thing that would have made him look more creditworthy. And when he paid the card down to 0 one month because he felt like being extra responsible, his utilization dropped to 0 on his only active line, and the score dinged him again. The system punishes people who look too cashy. It's weird. It's arguably dumb, but it's the system we're in. Now, on top of all of that, there's the quiet thing inflation does to fixed rate debt. When Jenna signs a 0% loan today, her payment is frozen at $583 a month for 60 months. Groceries go up, rent goes up, her paycheck probably goes up. But that car payment is locked in today's dollars. She's paying back the loan with dollars that are worth a little less every year. In 2021, when inflation briefly shot past 7%, people who'd finance cars at 3% were effectively being paid to borrow in real terms. The bank was losing money on the loan while the borrower got richer by sitting still. That window isn't as wide as it was, but it's still open for anyone getting a sub 3% deal. Clark, who paid cash, surrendered the full value of his dollars at the moment they were strongest. Jenna is paying hers back slowly in increasingly weaker money. That's not a trick. That's just how fixed rate debt works in an inflationary economy. Okay, before the comment section catches fire, I want to do the honest thing and steelman the other side. Because the pay cash crowd isn't entirely wrong. They're just solving for a different problem. The best version of their argument, and this is basically the Dave Ramsey position, goes like this. Personal finance is 80% behavior and 20% math. And most people who finance a car and tell themselves, I'll invest the difference, absolutely will not invest the difference. They'll spend it, they'll upgrade the car, they'll take a trip, they'll forget the plan inside of 6 months. The national personal savings rate in America is about 3.6%. 3.6. That tells you almost everything you need to know. The average person who frees up capital does not invest that capital. They consume it. Ramsey's rule is basically a behavioral guardrail, a rule simple enough and rigid enough that even people with zero discipline can follow it, and for a huge chunk of the population, that's the right call. He's not wrong about them. He's just wrong about everybody. There's a trap I want to name here because I think it explains why smart people keep making this mistake. I call it the responsible feeling tax. It's what happens when you confuse the feeling of being responsible with the outcome of being responsible. Paying cash feels responsible. You can touch it, you can brag about it. Your dad will nod approvingly at Thanksgiving, but feelings are not a financial metric. The outcome of paying cash in 2026 for a financially disciplined buyer is being a few $1,000s poorer than you needed to be. You paid the responsible feeling tax. You bought the vibe. Somebody sold you a ritual and called it wisdom. So here's the real question, and I want you to actually answer it honestly. Which person are you? If you finance a car and spend the freed up money on Uber Eats and weekend trips, the pay cash crowd is right about you, and you should do what they say. There is zero shame in needing a guardrail. Most people do. But if you have an automated transfer running to a brokerage account, a real emergency fund, and you actually check your 401k contribution rate more than once a year, congratulations. You've already built the discipline the cash rule was designed to force. Following it anyway is like wearing floaties in your own pool. You don't need them. They're slowing you down. Now, in fairness, there are situations where paying cash still wins. If you're buying a cheap used car in the $5,000 to $15,000 range, just pay cash. Used car loan rates are punitive, the origination fees eat the spread, and the math breaks down. If your credit is subprime and the only loan you can get is at 13 or 16%, pay cash because nothing you invest in reliably beats that guaranteed cost. If you're retired, already own your house, and aren't building credit for anything, pay cash and simplify your life. The rule isn't universal in either direction, it's a decision tree. What's changed is that for prime borrowers in 2026, the decision tree now points toward financing more often than not. One last thing that the pay cash crowd hasn't caught up with, and here is the psychological edge Jenna has that Clark completely gave up: liquidity. By keeping that $35,000 in her own name rather than giving it to a dealership, she has what's called a liquidity premium. If a once-in-a-decade investment opportunity comes along next year, Jenna has the capital to strike. Clark has a driveway full of metal that's losing value every day. He didn't just spend his money, he locked his potential in a cage and threw away the key. The guys yelling at you on AM radio tell you to own your assets, but they forget that if your money isn't moving, it isn't working. So back to Clark and Jenna. It's 5 years after that Tuesday at the dealership. They pull up next to each other at a stoplight. Same RAV4, same mileage, same slightly faded paint job. Clark is proud of his paid-off car. Jenna just made her final payment last week. Clark glances over and smirks a little because he's been quietly smug about the cash thing for half a decade at every barbecue, every dinner party, every family Christmas. What he doesn't see is the Roth IRA sitting on Jenna's phone, the emergency fund in her savings account, the $3,500 of free money the bank paid her for doing essentially nothing, and the credit score that just pre-approved her for a mortgage rate a quarter point better than his. They're in the same car. They are not in the same financial life. And the difference between them wasn't luck, income, or willpower. It was one decision at a dealership 5 years ago that looked identical from the outside and was completely different underneath. The light turns green. They both drive off. One of them is richer. Neither of them will ever look it. Before you hand your whole savings account to a dealership and walk out feeling like you just won something, do the actual math. Your loan rate versus your savings rate, your credit situation, your emergency fund, your real discipline, not the discipline you want to think you have. For most of you with decent credit in this environment, the answer is going to surprise you, and it's going to save you a few $1,000 per trade cycle. Over a lifetime of buying cars every 7 or 8 years, that adds up to real money. The kind of money that buys actual things, not just the feeling of being responsible. If this video saved you a few $1,000s on your next car, or even just made you check the rate one more time before writing the check, hit subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.